Have you ever, stared up at the night sky and wondered if that famous Star of Bethlehem was a literal astronomical event?
Right, not just a miracle, but something you could actually track.
Exactly. Something predictable. Well, that's exactly what the sources we've gathered for today are suggesting.
Today, we're doing a deep dive into celestial mechanics and ancient interpretation. We're analyzing sources that systematically track planetary conjunctions, especially this one they call the Christ star.
And they interpret them as these precise divine signals, markers for major historical and, well, even future religious timelines.
That's the idea.
So our mission is to take these complicated celestial alignments, which, let's be honest, they happen all the time,
They're not that rare, no.
and figure out why these specific moments are being flagged as, prophetic markers. We're looking for what they can tell us about the presumed birth date of Jesus and maybe even what they might reveal about the timing for the end of the church age.
To really get into this, we have to define the centerpiece. The Christ star, in this research, it's not a supernova or a comet.
Right.
It's a very specific and actually dazzling planetary conjunction between Jupiter and Venus. And that union is so powerful because of the symbolism attached to each of those planets.
And the power of that union, according to, well, ancient understanding, is entirely in that symbolism. Jupiter is the king planet. It's the largest, the powerhouse.
The planet of the Messiah, it's often called. It represents that male alpha typology, the ruling figure.
So Jupiter is the king.
And Venus completes the pair. It's the beautiful morning and evening star. And it represents the female aspect, often associated with the bride.
And the sources are quick to point out that Jesus actually claims that title for himself.
He does, yeah. In the book of Revelation, he identifies as the bright and morning star. So that right there establishes the essential king meets bride celestial signature.
Okay, that sets up a beautiful, very clear picture.
Yeah.
But the sources immediately complicate it. They point out that Venus has this powerful duality we need to acknowledge right away.
It does. I mean, in Isaiah 14.12, Lucifer is also referred to as the morning star, son of the dawn.
So it's not a coincidence.
This research argues it's foundational. It sets up what they call a dichotomy of the Christs. Lucifer tries to counterfeit, all the attributes and metaphors of the true Christ, whether it's the lion, the serpent, or the light.
So right from the start, we have to be careful. These signs are powerful, but their meaning really depends on where they happen and what they're aligned with.
It forces a careful reading, absolutely.
Okay, so let's unpack this historical alignment then. If the sign itself, Jupiter meeting Venus, is up for interpretation, then the location of that original Christ star must have been the key for the Magi.
That's it exactly. The original conjunction that drew the Magi in was located in the constellation of Leo. And in the context of celestial prophecy, that location is profoundly significant.
And why Leo? What makes that constellation so critical to someone like the Magi, steeped in that ancient wisdom?
Leo is, well, it's universally known as the king constellation, but more specifically, in this framework, it's the celestial euphemism for the Lion of the tribe of Judah.
The long-promised king.
Exactly. And it also marks the end of the Mazzaroth, which is the ancient celestial storyline about the coming savior. So when the king planet, Jupiter, joined the bride planet, Venus, inside the king constellation,
The wise men of Persia knew.
they knew without a doubt that a king savior had been born.
And the sources seem to be suggesting it wasn't just, one flash in the sky. It was a whole choreographed sequence of signs over months, maybe even years.
That's the core discovery. The first Christ star, that Jupiter-Venus conjunction, happened on August 11th in IQ 3 BC, but that was just setting the stage.
The opening act.
Right. Exactly 1 month later, the first of 3 Jupiter-Regulus conjunctions began.
And Regulus is literally the king star. So you have the king planet, Jupiter, doing a triple pass over the king star, Regulus, all inside the king constellation, Leo. I mean, that is a signature that screams royalty.
It's the celestial declaration. And based on that precise triple timing, the sources propose a highly specific date for Jesus' actual birth, September 11th, Nagana 3 BC.
Which corresponds exactly to the Jewish feast of Yom Teruah.
It does.
And that's fascinating because we can't just let that term fly by. Yom Teruah is the Feast of Trumpets. It's a time traditionally linked to calling assemblies or, symbolically, the coronation of a king.
So it makes perfect symbolic sense for the birth of a king savior if you follow this celestial chronology.
So if the birth was September 11th, Naga 3 BC, then the sources calculate backwards from there for the timing of conception.
Right. 9 months prior.
Which lands around December 11th, Magister 4 BC.
Aligning perfectly with the Jewish Feast of Lights, Hanukkah. It presents this complete cyclical timeline connecting the celestial calendar, the Jewish feasts, and the New Testament narrative.
Conception at the Festival of Light, birth at the Festival of the King's coronation. It's it's a very compelling argument for dating these biblical events that are usually so generalized.
It really is.
Okay, now let's fast forward to the Magi's journey. Everyone pictures them, kneeling at the manger on the night of the birth.
Yeah, the classic nativity scene.
But the sources use detailed astronomical data to prove that the wise men arrived significantly later.
This is one of the most surprising insights, I think. It really overturns that popular belief. The Magi were tracking the movement of the sign, which was Jupiter. But Jupiter had to complete its full orbital journey, including its retrograde path, to tell them where to stop.
So what did the king planet do to signal they'd arrived?
Well, due to its retrograde motion, that optical illusion where a planet seems to slow down, stop, and then reverse direction, Jupiter appeared to become stationary. It literally looked like it stopped in the sky precisely over Bethlehem.
And when do the sources calculate that this happened?
That moment occurred on December 25, -2 BC. This is the exact day the Magi, who had been traveling for over a year from Persia, would have reached the location.
Wait, hold on. If we run those numbers, from the birth date of September 11th, -3 BC, to their arrival on December 25, -2 BC, that means they weren't visiting a newborn baby in a stable.
That's right. By the time Jupiter stopped and signaled the end of their journey, Jesus would have been a young toddler,
How old?
approximately 1 year, 3 months, and 14 days old, about 67 weeks later. And this specific calculation, it corroborates the Bible's description that the Magi visited the young king in a house, not at the manger.
And that detail makes Herod Agrippa's awful command, the slaughter of the innocents, make chilling precise sense.
Absolutely. Herod ordered the slaughter of all male infants 2 years and younger. Why 2 years? He chose that window based on the timeline he had received from the Magi about when the sign first appeared and when they finally arrived.
So the astronomical data perfectly explains the scope and timing of that historical event.
Wow. It's that kind of detailed tracking that drove the Magi.
Okay, so we've mapped the historical start point for this great prophetic clock. But since Jupiter and Venus meet up fairly often, astronomers know these conjunctions are frequent, the real question is, what made the recent ones, especially in 2015 and 2016, a meaningful echo of that original sign?
It wasn't about the frequency, it was about the specific signature that returned. The original Christ stars in -3 and -2 BC occurred in Leo, the king constellation.
Right.
After nearly 2 millennia, the 2015 Christ star on June 30th and the 2016 Christ star on October 25th also returned to the constellation of Leo.
So it was a return to that original royal signature, almost like a reboot of the system.
Exactly, and 2015 was even more significant. The sources call it cosmic because it was the only recent year to feature a double conjunction in Leo. That just amplified the signal that the king's signature was back.
And this is where the numerical correlation really starts to convince those who are following this research.
It's an undeniable pattern for them. If you take that presumed birth date of September 11, -3 BC, and you add a period of 2016 years and 9 months,
You land precisely on the date of that June 30, 2015 Christ star.
precisely. For those tracking these prophetic markers, this suggests a specific time measure was being taken, from the birth of the king to the powerful return of his original sign.
That is highly specific. And I remember the sources mentioning another particular date linked to that 2015 event, July 23rd.
Yes. The June 30th Christ star is connected to July 23rd, 723. This date is referenced as both the end of the summer wheat harvest and the start of the astrological new year.
So it reinforces that idea of transition, a harvest.
Always connected to periods of transition or harvest, whether spiritual or literal.
Now we shift gears completely to the most recent event, the Christ star, on May 23, 2024. This time, the conjunction was outside of Leo. It moved into the constellation of Taurus.
And this changes the context entirely. We're moving from the king's birth to what the sources interpret as the church's conclusion.
The 2024 alignment was fundamentally different.
It was. It wasn't just the king and the bride meeting. It involved a triangulation. Jupiter and Venus were aligned with the sun, and crucially, the star cluster known as the Pleiades.
And that's the key. The Pleiades shifts the focus entirely to the church age.
It does.
What's fascinating here is how the sources interpret the Pleiades. For most of us, it's just a beautiful group of 7 stars.
But in this context, the Pleiades are interpreted as the congregation of the Judge King. They're seen as symbolizing the seven churches of Asia from the book of Revelation.
And by extension, the entire church age, the bride of Christ.
Precisely. The analogy ties it back to New Testament imagery. They're seen as the celestial cluster representing the seven stars that Jesus holds in his hands.
Like a spiritual menorah with seven lights.
Exactly. And this visual sets up a pretty significant celestial drama. In this narrative, the sources suggest the Pleiades, the seven maidens, the church, are being held captive or subjected to the judgment associated with the constellation of Taurus.
The bull. So why is Taurus significant? What does the bull symbolize here?
Well, Taurus, the bull, often symbolizes strength, perseverance, but also, in a judgmental sense, raw power. And in this cosmic alignment, you have Orion the champion, or hunter position opposite Taurus.
Poised for what the research calls the celestial bullfight.
He's the one opposing the judgment of Taurus to rescue the seven maidens.
And the implication of the 2024 Jupiter-Venus conjunction happening right there, triangulated with the Pleiades.
It signals the pending conclusion of this sevenfold church age. The king meeting the bride at that location signals the soon birth or liberation of the bride of Christ being held captive.
So for the researchers tracking this celestial rescue is interpreted directly as a reference to the Rapture event.
That's the interpretation, yes.
And just as the original Christ star was about a month before Jesus' physical birth, this 2024 sign could be marking a similar delineation of time, signaling the church age's birth or liberation is imminent.
That time correlation reinforces the idea that these signs aren't random. They're part of a continuous, systematically measured prophetic timeline.
And beyond the astronomy, the sources highlight a really powerful numerical detail tied specifically to that date, May 23, 2024.
Indeed. May 23, 2024 was the 144th day of the Gregorian calendar. And remember, 2024 is a leap year, so that placement is particularly precise. This date is seen as fulfilling the 144 prophetic numerical code.
Why is the number 144 so symbolically potent in this context?
The number 144, or specifically 144,000, points to that highly specific group of individuals in prophecy, the sealed Jewish witnesses.
The ones commissioned to carry the witness of Jesus during the tribulation period, after the church age concludes.
Exactly. So this conjunction, falling on the 144th day, symbolically suggests a clear change of guard, a transfer of the witness from the corporate body of the church to the 144,000 Jews from the 12 tribes.
It's interpreted as a celestial marker for when that maturing process for the church is finalized, paving the way for the next phase of prophetic history.
That's the idea.
This has been a fascinating journey. So to summarize the core theme of this deep dive, we've tracked the systematic interpretation of these Jupiter-Venus conjunctions.
The king meeting the bride.
Across millennia, we saw its significance tied to Leo for the king's birth, and then more recently, its signal tied to that triangulation in Taurus with the Pleiades for the church's conclusion.
And the consistent message across all these sources is that signs are not the event. They are not the rapture itself. They weren't the physical birth.
They're markers.
They're critical chronological markers that delineate time. They signal that a major prophetic period has concluded or that a crucial event is about to unfold.
And if we connect this to the bigger picture, this research really reminds us of the fundamental purpose of celestial bodies, which the sources note were created for signs and seasons.
It highlights the continuous effort from the ancient Magi to modern researchers to interpret these precise cosmic patterns to understand a greater timeline. And this research is clearly ongoing.
It's not over.
Not at all. The sources we looked at are already tracking future signals, like another Christ star conjunction on November 10, 2028. That one's in Virgo, linking it back to the Revelation 12 sign. It suggests a continuous prophetic narrative written in the stars.
So since the 2024 Christ star occurred on the 144th day of a leap year, and leap years are needed to keep our calendar aligned with cosmic time, consider this. If the sign marking the final moment of the church age is calculated using the very correction factor required to sync human and cosmic time, does that suggest the stars are using our own attempts at calendar synchronization as their prophetic countdown? Something to mull over as you watch the sky tonight.